Welcome to People Doing Good for Others. Welcome to People Doing Good for Others, where we honor and celebrate, hold in the light, those who truly make significant contributions in our communities. I'm Gary York, and I'm grateful to be with you today. We want to thank Wilkes Communications, RiverStreet Network, and WIFM in Elkin for this opportunity, and thank you for joining us today. My featured guest is Dr. Wesley Wood. He's a career educator in Wilkes County. He's Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. He grew up here, graduated from North High. He has a PhD from Gardner-Webb and is dedicated to this school system, as we all are. And I want to thank you again for being with us. So welcome this morning, Dr. Wood.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate you having me.
It's an honor to have you here. And go back to growing up and some wonderful experiences that you've had, and tell us how you kind of got started into this career.
Be glad to. Basically, I grew up in the little town of Hayes, little community of Hayes here in Wilkes County. And just to be honest about it, I've been surrounded by educators my entire life. And my mother was a teacher assistant for about 24 years here with the Wilkes County schools. And my dad also was an instructor with Wilkes Community College. He formerly was the head shop foreman with Gaddy Motor Company, and later went on to start the auto body repair program here with the Wilkes County.
That's meaningful.
Yeah, and it's grown to be a huge program for the college. Several years ago they built a new building just to house the new program.
That's the McNeil facility?
Facility.
Yep. So
he's passed away now, but he was able to see that come to fruition, and was very excited about that program. But yeah, I grew up in Mountain View in the Hayes community. I spent a lot of time at school. My mom and dad had actually separated as a young child. So I spent most of my time with my mother, but did get to see my dad.
Your role model.
Yeah, she was my role model. I can't say enough about my mom. She's just such a hard worker. Growing up, I shared with you earlier before that, she worked multiple jobs just to make ends meet for me and my brother. I have a brother named Kevin. He owns Precision Motor Companies down in Roaring River. As a used car salesman, does a great job, but she was just such a role model for us growing up. She worked about 3 jobs, once again, just to make ends meet. So I spent a lot of time at school just because her being a teacher assistant.
Yeah.
And when she wasn't working with Wilkes County Schools, she was always working part-time jobs, such as the Little Dipper restaurant, which used to be up on 18. That started in Mountain View in Hayes, and Ronnie Miller was the owner of that, so she worked a couple of nights for him on the weekends, and then on Wednesdays and Saturdays she cleaned offices for Jenkins Wholesale when that was here in Wilkes. So as soon as school was out on Wednesdays, we would head, her and I together actually, to Jenkins Wholesale, and would clean offices to about 10 o'clock at night, 10:30. And then on Saturday mornings, we got up about 5 and headed back to Jenkins and worked to about 1 o'clock. So, I remember her from the time I was 11, 12 years old, taking me with her. And of course I helped her, and she instilled those hard work values in me at an early age. And, being in education, you don't always make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And when she retired at 24 years, if I remember correctly, her gross pay was about $13,000 a year from being.
What was her name?
Barbara.
Barbara.
Brown Wood. She's remarried now. Her name is Barbara Alford, and she lives in West Jefferson in Ashe County, and is very involved in her community and with her church there. But Yeah, she was just a real hard worker, and I learned really at an early age, you've got to really go at it if you want to be successful. And so she taught me a lot about that. And of course, I spent a lot of time with my dad too, particularly as I got older. Like I said, I got to see him about every other weekend during as a young child. But once I got my license and got older, I was able to really connect with him. And now that he's passed away, I reflect often on all the things that I learned from him that I didn't realize at the time. Good. And he was a go-getter. He always inspired me just to be the best I possibly could, at anything I'm doing. And that's kind of my philosophy. You gotta give it your best no matter what you're doing. Right. And so I try to teach that to my kids as well.
Tell us about your kids.
Well, I have first off, I have a wife named Melissa. We met actually in high school. She attended West Wilkes High School. I attended North Wilkes High School. And when I was 14, I moved from the North Wilkes community to the West Wilkes community. And my aunt had actually invited me to church as a teenager and to a youth event. And I met my wife there. And throughout high school, we dated. If I remember correctly, she'll kill me for not knowing the exact years, but 6 or 7 years before we actually got married. Yeah. So her name's Melissa. She's a finance officer with State Employees Credit Union up on 18.
Sure.
She's a go-getter too, a hard worker. She believes in customer service. In fact, if you go in the credit union there, you'll probably see several people just waiting in line to see her. And she just has a natural charisma, to want to do good things for others.
Oh, goodness.
And, so that's my wife. We've been married 20 years. Time flies. It's hard to believe we were just teenagers, several years ago. I have a daughter. My oldest daughter is Madison. She's 18, just graduated from West Wilkes High School this past year. And she's attending Wilkes Community College this fall. Yep. And she has plans to go into physical therapy, particularly the physical therapy assistance program at Caldwell. We're just taking a few classes to get her enrolled there, hopefully next year. They only take 25 students from across the state each year, so there's prerequisites you have to do to get in. But she's a go-getter as well. Since she's turned 16, she works at the Y probably, in the summer about 30 hours a week, during the school year about 20 hours a week. Also, she used to play a lot of sports through middle school and high school, so she bounces a lot as well. And my youngest daughter's Morgan. She's 14. She'll be attending West Wilkes High School this year as a freshman, which is really, really hard to believe. So she's the last of my children. So once again, just try to, hope that they see not only myself, but our whole family doing good things, for others, and just striving to give back to the community.
You mentioned Randy Jones.
Yeah, Randy he is just an exceptional guy. When I moved from the Mountain View community to the West Wilkes community, my intentions was to continue high school at North Wilkes because, I'd went to school for 9 years with those folks, and with my mom working at Mountain View Elementary School, I was able to continue to at least have transportation in the mornings to North Wilkes. But I was involved in athletics as well. I played football, basketball, and baseball, lettered in all sports, and this was really, really involved in athletics. Well, my issue was at the time, one, I didn't have my license, and two, if I had my license, I probably wouldn't have had a car to be able to even drive myself back and forth from school. But Randy just instantly realized how much sports meant to me, and different things influence people to do different or to behave in different ways. And I was one of those kids who, I'll tell you, I wasn't mean-spirited in any way, but I was pretty much mischievous. And so my principals and teachers and folks like Randy always tried to guide and direct me to do the right things. And he knew that sports meant a lot to me, and sports were probably going to keep me out of trouble. And so Randy also lived in the Cricket area at the time. So Randy made a commitment pretty much to me that he would help me get back and forth from home if I wanted to continue to, play sports. And of course he coached me as well. So, you know, there was many evenings, evening after evening after evening, that Randy was able to transport me back from North Wilkes to the
Kind of
West
understood.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes he might not leave to 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and I might have to be there all evening, but you know, he made sure that I got back home, and you know, it's things like that that you never forget the educators did for you. And you know, you mentioned about why I went into education. Was folks like Randy that did things like that made me, you know, realize that even though I thought I might have it rough at the time, there's folks that had a lot worse than I did student-wise, and that if there's anything I could do to give back, that's what I wanted to do.
You had a part-time business.
Yeah, actually, when I graduated college and getting married and starting off as a young couple, and you know, the salary of a teacher, I think the first year I taught, I made, you know, maybe $23,000, and my wife and I were wanting to start a family. So the first thing I did was John Cawthorn and I, which John's the director of the co-op here in Wilkes County with agriculture, and helped so many farmers. He's a wonderful guy, and I'll tell you a little bit more about him in a minute. But him and I had mowed some yards together, did some landscaping work, and so, you know, as soon as I got into teaching, you know, I was mowing about 21 yards a week. I was working at Wilkes Community College teaching math as an adjunct instructor at night, so I do that twice a week, mow 21 yards a week. My wife and I were very involved in our church at the time, which was Oak Grove Baptist down on 268. So we were, you know, teaching Sunday school, working with the youth, singing in the choir. So we had just tremendously busy schedules. So I've always tried to, you know, do whatever it takes, you know, to basically pay the bills, you know,
Sure.
and provide for my family. So, but yeah, John and I actually have been friends all through growing up, and from kindergarten forward. I can say there's 4 or 5 folks that really influenced me friend-wise. John's one of those. Another one was David Adams. David works with the prison system now here in Wilkes. Matthew Higgins, who owns a construction company. A lot of people know Matthew. Matthew's now a pastor up in Trapville. Chris Falls, another one. Chris works with the EMS service here in Wilkes. So, you know, we all had similar mindsets growing up, and even through high school. And anytime we saw one of us kind of straying and going off on the wrong path, we were really good to try to correct each other and support each other, and have a good support network. And so when I graduated high school, John and I, we just got to talking one day, and, you know, decided that we wanted to go to college, obviously, and neither one of us knew exactly what we wanted to do. And so we left and went to Appalachian, and we roomed together for 2 years. And John at that point decided he wanted to go into agriculture education, and so NC State was the only, or the closest program for that he felt comfortable going to. So he attended NC State and graduated there, and actually taught agriculture here for us in Wilkes County schools for several years at East Wilkes High School, and then later transitioned to North Wilkes High School. So yeah, John's had a big impact on me just from our experiences of living together for 2 years and being friends for forever. But we just really got to reflecting about what all folks had done for us as students, and as we were trying to decide our major. And like I said, I'd spent so much time at school growing up, with my mom being a TA. My grandma's another saint. Her name was Dovey Pendry Brown. And my grandma actually worked in the cafeteria at North Wilkes for years. And before she, you know, got so old she couldn't, you know, work anymore. She lived right beside all of us growing up. So, you know, as soon as I got off the school bus every evening, that's the first place I went, you know, was my grandma's. And she always had a cup of Kool-Aid and a Little Debbie oatmeal pie, you know, every evening when I got off the bus. And she always, you know, asked me how my day went and wanted me to tell her all about it. And, you know, she pretty much was my second mother, you know, growing up, and so supportive. So, you know, growing up in school, I can just think of time after time after time that folks had done something for me that I may or may not have known about. And I'll share one example with you. when I was in the 7th grade, believe it or not, we took a trip to Florida to Disneyland as a field trip. And back then, I mean, that was huge if you went somewhere like that for a field trip. So we had 4 adults and some chaperones taking a whole group of middle school age 7th graders to Florida. And I remember as they were planning the trip and having the parent meetings, you know, about that, I remember my mom coming to me and just telling me, you know, Wesley, I'm just going to have to be honest with you. We're not going to be able to afford for you to go on this trip. And, you know, my mom provided tremendously. I mean, there's always food on the table. I always had clothes to wear. But, you know, I was one of those kids, too, that only got, you know, 1 pair of tennis shoes a year. And I always wore my brother's clothes. And when it came baseball season, I was using somebody else's glove, that type of thing. But once again, she did what she had to do to provide. But I remember her telling me about that we wouldn't be able to go. And I guess the word kind of got out among the staff of Mountain View Elementary School at that time. And the next thing I know, I'm able to go on that trip. And I found out later that basically the school had kind of passed the hat among the staff for all the students that couldn't go on that trip because of finances. And, you know, things like that just mean so much to me. And later on, we, as an 8th grader, they took another trip to Washington, and I didn't get to go on that trip. And but you know, John and I really reflected on all those experiences we had from our teachers. And I could go through. I could probably name every teacher from kindergarten to I graduated. But you know, there's several that stick out. You know, Fonda Pendry. She was my mom's teacher as a TA. She had a lot of influence on me. Janie Ward, who I'm actually related to through the Pendrys. Also, Jackie Thornburg. Jackie was just outstanding. Jeff Duff as another coach. Sharon Huffman, who actually is one of our school board members.
Sure.
I had her in high school as for biology and advanced biology and maybe even chemistry. And of course, she had me sitting right on the front row, you know, in the classroom. But you know, teachers like that, they just built such relationships with us. Diane Minton's another one. Diane, she had such a way of managing her classroom and running things that she would actually put you in your place and you didn't even know what just happened. I mean, you know, but you know, the thing about it is I knew they cared about me, you know, and school was a place that I wanted to go and wanted to be. And I think about my youngest daughter, Morgan. She loves school. She loves, you know, she gets up in the morning, she's excited to go, and it's just a happy place to be. But, you know, if you think about our community, school is one of the most consistent and safest and loving places that kids have to go today. And it's also a place where you can get your mind off maybe what is going at home or the struggles that's going on in life. And, you know, as a kid growing up, once again, I thought it may have been rough at the time, but of course it's not as rough as kids have it today. But, you know, like I mentioned to you earlier, growing up in a dysfunctional family somewhat, and then I had an uncle who lived beside of me who he was like a second dad, but he was also an alcoholic, and there was just something, you know, crazy going on almost every night. And so school was a safe place for me and my brother to be able to
Dr. Wood, tell me about, you chose to graduate from Appalachian. Your first teaching job, was it here?
It was Mountain View Elementary School.
And you taught?
I started off in an interim position teaching 8th grade math. And at the end of that year, the teacher that I was filling in for actually decided to come back, and I was unemployed. And I went and interviewed several different places, Alexander County, several schools here in Wilkes. But, you know, there was just something about that Mountain View faculty that I wanted to be a part of. And Frances Tharp was the principal at the time, and she came to me and said, you know, I do have a elementary position open. My major was middle school math and science. Okay. And so she says, I have an elementary position open if you'd be interested in it. And I really just didn't want that position, but, you know, I just prayed that, you know, the good Lord would work it out. And what happened was Debbie Love was a middle school teacher who got promoted to an assistant principal. and that left a vacancy there in middle grades that fit my licensure. So, you know, Francis called me, offered me the position, and it was such a dynamic school, such a great place to be, and still is to this day. But that's how I got started teaching. I taught there 3 years, and then I was able to enroll in a master's program in public school administration. So the requirement was you had to have at least 3 years under your belt before you could enroll. And Debbie
Was this administration where today, was that a long time ago?
That was in 2005 when I graduated from Appalachian.
Okay.
With a master's.
Okay.
Yeah. Now it's called executive leadership, those programs are. Back then it was public school administration. But as a teacher, Debbie Love was assistant principal there, along with Francis Tharp Dr. Francis Tharp as the principal. And they just started recognizing some leadership abilities that I had as a young teacher with my colleagues and with my grade level, and just being involved on committees and different things and my input and suggestions. And so Debbie Love particularly started introducing me to some of the administrative duties of principals. And I would go during my planning time and work with her and sit with her and learn as much as I could. I was like a sponge. I'm just soaking it up, you know,
wow.
as much as I could. And so when I got the opportunity to enroll in that master's program, you know, I did that with Appalachian. And back then they didn't have cohorts, so you had to drive to the school and sign up for courses that you could.
Cohort's a word that I've learned from you.
Yeah.
Tell us the meaning of cohort.
Cohort, usually in an academic setting, is a group of people who start a program together and they're able to finish that program together.
Okay.
So the courses are all lined up where you know when you're going to start, you know when you're going to end, and you transition through those together. And Debbie,
so it's a like-minded group of people that come together that go down the road.
Yeah. For example, when I attended Gardner Webb, they solicited a group of individuals who all wanted to pursue a doctorate degree. And
It'd be a good time for us to get deep into that. Will you go ahead and do that?
I sure will. So I had actually, in my mind, knew that I wanted to go into district leadership at some point in time. So to be proactive and kind of plan ahead, I actually enrolled back with Appalachian State University in what's called an education specialist degree. Yep. And I attended Appalachian for 2 semesters, and while that was going on, Gardner Webb University out of Boiling Springs was working with leaders in our area and school districts on trying to create a doctoral program that would be here in Wilkes County. And if they had enough interest, the idea was that we would join together as a cohort and start together and finish together. And that did not end up panning out, but they did offer us a cohort in Winston-Salem in Winston-Salem at a facility they had there. So I dropped out of the Appalachian program, entered the doctoral program with Gardner Webb in Winston-Salem. There was also several other principals at that time.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. We have Dr. Susan Blackburn. She was a principal at the time. Dr. Dion Stocks. Susan just retired. She was our pre-K and elementary director, also principal of several schools here before she retired. And I'll mention a little bit about Susan too.
Sure.
Susan hired me in my first administrative job at West Wilkes Middle School. The schools had just opened, maybe been open a year, and I went through an interview process, and she interviewed me and hired me for the position. And I remember we met almost every Monday morning together for planning and discussion. And I would just sit there and just soak up her knowledge and wisdom that she had. And she was a great leader, and just really, really enjoyed that experience with her. We have Dr. Dion Stocks. Dr. Stocks is the principal here now of Wilkes Central High School. He was in our cohort. Dr. Donna Cotton, who now is our Chief Academic Officer, she was part of that cohort. Dr. Jody Weatherman. Jody's the principal of Mountain View Elementary School, and I'm trying to remember if I'm leaving one off. Let's see. I believe that was it.
That's it.
Yep. So we attended that cohort in Winston, so we had class on.
I'll go back and I have a list here.
Yeah.
Stott and you, Blackburn, Weatherman, and Cotton.
Yeah, that's it.
5 of you.
And so we would get in the car on Friday evenings, drive to Winston, and have class, come back again on Saturday for an all-day class with Dr. Martin.
Yeah,
Don Martin.
Tell his role, Dr. Don Martin.
Yeah, he was an adjunct instructor for Gardner-Webb, and he taught probably about 90% of our graduate classes. And I think the world of Dr. Martin.
Too.
And if I remember correctly, he had 17 years of superintendent experience just in Winston-Salem for South County Schools.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how many.
He's an
icon.
Icon.
But you talking about somebody with a memory.
Ooh.
We would have class, and he would tell us about things that happened 10 or 15 years ago, I mean in detail. But the thing I really enjoyed about Dr. Martin was he made our coursework very relevant. And
relevant.
So, yeah.
Wow.
When we would come in on Friday evenings or even Saturday mornings, the first thing we did was talk about things that had happened throughout the week related to leadership or related to public schools. And, he would share his opinion as a superintendent. He would ask us for our opinions. He would ask us, what would you do if you were in this role? And then we would, dissect those decisions to see what kind of results or consequences or barriers we may be facing during that time. But he was so influential on us. And in fact, if I see him today, he goes out of his way to make sure he says hello to all of us.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact,
I shall treasure the story of the 5 of you with him, and just imagine how wonderful that must have been.
It was just when you get involved in a program like that, you get kind of used to debriefing and reflecting. And reflecting with each other. So, when we would get in the car on Friday evening and ride down to the program, and on Saturday, it was just a good time for us to just share what challenges that we're facing as a school administrator. Because of course I was a principal at the time, and it was just a wonderful experience to be able to do that with Dr. Martin as well.
Yeah.
So we had a 2-year worth of classes.
Tell us about your dissertation.
Yeah.
I thought that was amazing.
Well, after my 2 years of coursework, we start our dissertation process, and so basically you're writing a book. And so I did a program evaluation, and what a program evaluation is you look to see, review a specific program that somebody is implementing, and you learn the history behind it of what were the reasons the program was started, why did it start, what had to be reviewed before it was implemented, what were the resources needed, and then you look to see what the results are. And so I did a program evaluation on an interview tool that Wilkes County Schools was using at the time, and it was called Ventures for Excellence. And the basis of the interview program was to determine if we use a standard set of questions in our district and we use screeners in our district for applicants. In other words, if we have 30 people apply for a job and we use a screener tool, hopefully it'll show us that we don't need to interview all 30. You have to meet certain criteria through those screener tools. And the focus of the tool was to focus on core values and beliefs of people, because during an interview it's very, very hard to understand and learn everything you need to know about a candidate. And we have some staff that you may hire that does a great job of teaching and learning, but they may be missing some of those core values that's instilled with them from the life experiences that they've had. So the purpose of the tool was to try to hire people that had greater core values. So after everything was set in stone with my dissertation, my research showed that that qualities of excellent teachers really haven't changed since the 1950s, when it was first started studying. And that the tool, in fact, helps you hire folks that have those qualities of excellent teachers, but in the end, it didn't change test results for kids. Okay. But what it did change is the management and the culture of a school. Yep. And you deal less with personnel issues if you hire the right person in the very beginning. You have team players, you develop greater teacher leaders, and you create a better school atmosphere if you can hire folks that have those core values and beliefs. So that was kind of in summary what my dissertation was about.
Dr. Wood, before we finish, and I think this is a paramount for me, your immediate group, the folks who serve in the human resources area, staged the Teacher and Principal of the Year event at the Stone Center, and nobody does it as well as you guys do. And I want you to recognize your staff and what goes into staging an event that meaningful.
Well, I'll tell you, Gary, the credit to that event goes to our staff. We have an outstanding human resources department, and I think we have the best department not only in Wilkes County schools, but I think we have the best department.
I can't wait to get there. I mean, I come early. It's just
it's an exciting event, but that is put on by our staff. I'd like to mention them by name: Nicole McNeil, Lisa Holcomb, Abby Dyer, and Donna Amsher. They do a great job of planning that event. But basically, there's a lot that goes on. First off, North Carolina has a Teacher of the Year and Principal of the Year program. So each district gets to set the guidelines on how those candidates are selected and nominated and voted on. So we implement a process where elementary teachers are nominated through their schools. Those teachers go through an interview process. The top 5 teachers selected from the interview process also are observed in the classroom. So we have a committee. That committee consists of our previous Teacher of the Year, previous Principal of the Year, myself, representation from DPI, along with representation from the community. Linda Cheek's always been helpful with the Chamber of Commerce to nominate someone from the community to serve on that committee. So they go out and observe those top 5 finalists. And through a scoring system, we recognize, of course, all of our teachers, because all of our teachers are Teachers of the Year. I mean, in reality, it's just a great time to come and just celebrate the good things going on with education, and specifically in Wilkes County schools and across our country. You know,
it's amazing.
It's amazing. So we recognize a teacher that year. We do the same thing with principals. Principals are nominated by their peers and then voted on by a group of administrators. So we have a Principal of the Year we recognize, but our ladies work, of course, with vendors. They work with the Stone Center crew to make sure that every single thing is almost to perfection, to the best it can be. And then we get a lot of community support from the community, donations for our winners. It's just a way for them to acknowledge them with a small token of appreciation. So it's just a great event to come and just hear about all the good things going on.
Dr. Wesley Wood has been sharing his experience and his hope today, and what a wonderful 30 minutes. I've just been sitting on the end of my seat. So we want to thank Wilkes Communications and RiverStreet Productions and WIFM for this opportunity to share the incredible contributions of Dr. Wesley Wood, how he grew up in this county, how he earned his PhD, and has an outstanding group of folks in the human resources. It's been a great day. And I want to thank you very much for sharing with us, and hope you'll see you the next time, and promise to come back if you will.
Thank you,
God bless you, friend.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for being here.